My name is LarryVanD and I'm an alcoholic. You know, a lot of people get nicknames, you know, back when you're kids, and if you're too short or too wide or too thick or too tall. And when I was a kid, you know, I look at the program. They never use my initials. My initials are VD, and they... It's either Larry V or LarryVanD or, you know, just plain VD. And, of course, you know that's one of my nicknames as a kid. And somebody say, hey, I want you to meet my friend VD. I stick my hand out, and people would pull away. You know, so you people with a name like herpes and AIDS know what I'm talking about. It's just, yeah. Last drink I've had up to the moment was 31 years, 363 days ago on November 11th in 1975. And I never look ahead to the next 2 days because I was drunk, you know, before that date came. So far I haven't had to change that date, and that seemed to have worked best for me. I have a home group called Berea Men's. Actually, I've had a home group ever since I found out what one was, and that was after I moved to the Cleveland, Ohio area. And my home group, Berea Men's, is a Wednesday night group, and it's a lead meeting, what we call lead, you call maybe speaker. It's a meeting that's usually somewhat lengthy, and it's my second sponsor, fellow that passed away with 52 years, started it, and he wanted what he called his old-fashioned AA. No frills, no, just strictly coffee, donuts, meetings, steps, God, 12-step and helping, just the basics, and it's still pretty much that way. So if any of you come in our area and you'd like to, any of the men would like to come to a meeting, please come over. But just remember, it's not going to be a short meeting. See, so it's that's the way that is. And then I also have a sponsor, Kenny B. He's got 35 years, and Kenny is like being in an AA history class. Because Kenny was one of those guys that was a wheelman for many of the long-timers that were in the Cleveland area. And I remember he brought Kaz over to our home group when Kaz had his 63rd anniversary, and he was in the Alzheimer phases, and Kaz, he dressed up, boy, looked good, but just couldn't always remember everything. And so we gave him that certificate that day, and Kaz looked at that, and he says to Kenny, he says, that's for AA, isn't it? He says, that sure is, Ken. He says, they misspelled my name. He was alert to that. And he kept it on his dresser over at the nursing place until he finally passed away. But Kenny is a super person in Alcoholics Anonymous, on the go, active. He lives out those things we talk about and we hear about. So he's been a good sponsor for me, and we communicate every week, and we meet oftentimes at different meetings and things like that. So those are just some of the basic. My first sponsor, Harold, we used to say, you know, you're supposed to tell, you know, give the people some facts about yourself so they know where you're coming from. And those are some of the basic facts. And I just want to thank Alan with his call, I think it was about a year ago, that he called up and he asked me if I was available for this date. And I'm thinking, that's a year. How about next week? And so I had to go out and get another one of those calendar things so I could put something down. But I got the biggest kick out of him because he says, how old are you? I thought he meant sobriety date. I said, you mean my... He says, no, how old are you? I thought, what the hell? I got to bring my ID card or something down here? This is a tough group, you know, got to show identification. Yeah, and so I got my Ohio Buckeye card, and I thought I was a little bit too old for the group until I saw your speakers. Hell, I'm one of the young ones. But the rest of those guys can hold up. They've been doing it for a long time, so it's... And I spent 41 years in college football. And, of course, this time of the year is always an exciting time for me. I've been retired now for 5 years, but I say that to let you know that oftentimes I think along those lines, the coaching and athletics, and sometimes I use illustration that makes sense to me. They may not make sense to you. And in that case, I ask you to get your own illustrations. And it's just, I see things in pictures. I don't see things in words, and diagrams and connectors and all this different things. So when I think of, and I've said this many times, when I think of a celebration of recovery that we're having this weekend, say that's what I look at. I look at this as being the opportunity to bring our sobriety, to bring our lives, to bring our loved ones. We got many people here that are not AA, or my wife Barbara down here, she's not programmed, but we had 17 years of sobriety of marriage last week. So and there's other family members here not AA, and we were able to come together and meet and enjoy the weekend and be in the meetings and do the side stuff and have the meals and just enjoy each other. And in my kind of terms, like in 210 down at San Antonio will be the International. And I call that the Olympics of AA. And I've been to a few of those, and people from all over the world. A fantastic experience. I remember when I was in San Diego when we were saying the Lord's Prayer, I believe it was on Friday night. And I had the end seat in the row. And I reached across the aisle, and there was a gentleman who had the headset on. He was from South America. And I had my hand over here. My son, who's now got 20 years in the program, was there. And a guy next to him, a guy I sponsored from the community. And we all, 60,000 of us, said the Lord's Prayer. And I don't know the last time you had 60,000 people say the Lord's Prayer. But I'll tell you something, it brings goosebumps and tears to my system. And I thought, that alcoholism, that whips people all over. I just look at all these name tags and where these people are from. Alcohol is a champion in its field and has been whipping a lot of people, and Alcoholics Anonymous is a contender against that. And has been given sobriety to people that used to have problems with alcohol. Here it is in South America, here it is in my family, and here it is in my community. And a simple little illustration like that brought that kind of a connection to my mind. And then in Akron University, usually around June 10th, we have Founders Day. And that's another one of those things, if you've never tried it, try it one time. Decide what you want. Go walk the same steps that Bill Wilson walked. Go out to Dr. Bob's house and relive the early history. For some of us, that strengthens us to let us know that we're a part of something that was started there, and our assignment is to carry it on. And so, when Bill Wilson made that trip that day from the Mayflower Hotel, he made 12 phone calls at a nickel apiece. AA started on 60 cents. And he finally made that last connection and got invited. And I believe he says that he walked out there. Is that right, Bob? He walked out to the carriage house. Barb and I, we measured that off, and I think it's 3.5 miles he walked. So, and then when he talked with Dr. Bob, he spent 5 hours. And I stopped to think, to what length will I go to carry a message? Will I make 12 phone calls to help somebody? Will I walk 3.5 miles, 3 miles, 5 miles, so I might be useful and helpful to somebody? Will I take the time, say 5 hours? That's probably the thing most of AAs would do. We can talk 5 hours, just not tonight, but I stop and think it, because my first sponsor used to say, what do you owe? What do you owe for your recovery? And when do you get to pay it back? When is it paid up? And some of us think never. It's one of those things that we have an opportunity to share and give throughout our recovery. And then today we have our pockets of enthusiasm. This is like a bowl game to me. Like whether it be the Fiesta Bowl or the Rose Bowl. This is a bowl game atmosphere for Alcoholics Anonymous. And we have the right to celebrate and laugh and get to meet each other and share like that. There's a lot of strength in this room, a lot of power in this room, a lot of energy in this room, recovery stuff. I have a chance to come here and get my batteries charged and get myself put back together, so come Sunday and Monday I can take that back home with me and try to share that with those around me. My battery may run down about Tuesday or Wednesday. I might have to go another place. And that takes me to my home group. To me, the strength of our program is where that home group, that basic grouping of meetings that we go to, that we make a commitment to, and we're going to be there, in my case, Wednesday or Monday and Friday and whatever those other regular meetings are. And that's where we get our basic fundamentals, and that's where we get our basic strength. In the world of athletics, the greater your fundamentals, probably the better you will operate and perform. And that's true of arts and music and all kinds of things. If I've got good fundamentals, I have a chance to be a better dentist. And so the stronger our AA fundamentals are, it seems to me the better, at least in my life, I've been able to react to life and try to give back to life than I ever had before. And in my business, we used to say, I had a theme. Don't underestimate your opponent. If you do, you're liable to get whipped. You know, back in Ohio, they're still talking about getting whipped by Florida. You know, back in the Fiesta Bowl. Up in Michigan, they're talking about a place called Appalachia State. Over in Kentucky, their basketball program is saying, Gardner Webb who? Because the seemingly strong Goliath opponent got whipped by the little Davids of life. And I'm one of those that underestimated the power of alcohol. My first introductions to alcohol was basically when I went off to college. I grew up in South Bend, Indiana, under the Golden Dome over there. They're having a few troubles themselves this year. Navy just broke a 43-year, streak on them, and so that underestimate the opponent. A lot of things liable to get yourself fired, which you're allowed to do. But I went off to college up in Evanston, Illinois, and that was my first introduction to some real serious drinking. I had tasted it as a kid and things like that. My family, my mom, my dad, I have no relatives that fall into the alcoholism category. A couple of ornery ones, but that wasn't the cause. And I went off to college. I was the only one ever out of the family to do that. And I was not totally equipped for that, as I was somewhat out of my element. I'm one of those type of people that, depending on the room and the circumstance of the people I'm with, I can either feel very confident or I can feel very inconfident. You put me in a gymnasium on a field or give me a bat, a ball, like that stuff. I feel good. I'm okay. Let's go. Let's play. But if you put me in where there's smart people or well-to-do people or textbooks and big books and things like that and words, I start to feel very inferior because that's a weakness of mine to this day. And so I went off to college to play football, but as it turns out, they want you to go to class. And I tried that, and I want to tell you something. I gave it one good effort. My first quarter, and I got 2 D's and an F. And I came home, and I told my mom and dad they were high D's. And my dad never got an 8th grade. What's he know? See, and Mom was a little smarter than that, however. And I want to tell you, I wasn't drinking at the time. See, so I couldn't even blame that on alcohol. And so a lot of guys reached out to help guide me, so to speak. And there about springtime, I had a couple of teammates that were ex-service people and people that I looked up to. Everybody's got their heroes. And my friend John, my teammate, he was a heavyweight boxing champ in the Marine Corps, a real man's man. Good looking, smart, cool, all that stuff. Kind of guy you kind of like to be like. And his buddy Lou over here, about 6'6" and 260, which in those days was big. That's not big today, but it was then. And they invited me to go into Chicago with them, and I don't think I remember asking them why. We could have, whatever they wanted to do, they included me, so I went along. And so next thing I know, we're in a bar in Chicago, and they're drinking beer, I'm drinking beer, and after a few beers, I found what I call the magic of alcohol. All of a sudden, alcohol was doing for me what Larry couldn't do for himself. I didn't feel inferior anymore. In fact, I felt very confident. And maybe just a little bit cocky, and it seemed like I got smarter, and it seemed like I was cooler, and maybe a little bit more humorous, and a little bit more relaxed, and I don't know if I could have read any better or not, but it wasn't needed at that time. And so I like the effect. I believe that's in the big book. I think Dr. Silkworth mentioned something about that back in 1937 or something, the year I was born. And all of a sudden, I wanted some more. Surprise, surprise. Now, I have had a bad habit ever since I started to drink, and I have a tendency on occasion to overdrink. And you know, I'm a volume drinker. When you say to me, how can you drink so much or so fast? That's like a pat on the back. That's like getting another chevron for your sweater or something like that, see? And so that was just the way it was. And I'm still like that about a few other things too, but it's, I all of a sudden had negative effects in my life. I can look back at that first year at 18, 19 years old, that my life was affected negatively from an academic standpoint, because partying was better than, more important than studying, and you find other ways to get by. And then all of a sudden, athletically, if you sit in there and have a few beers, you are an All-American, you're all Bug 10, whatever your dreams are, and you haven't even left the bar instead of going to the weight room. And the next thing, the social part of it, in those days, if we got caught drinking, they would throw us out of school and you take your scholarship, all that stuff. And you didn't want that to happen, so you played hide and seek in Chicago. Believe me, that's a great, lots and lots of places, see. And they stay open to 4 in the morning. And so that was my beginning. And I didn't realize the difficulties. By my sophomore year, I want to quit. You ever need a good excuse to change your life pattern? I thought joining the service was patriotic and it would suit my needs. And so I volunteered for the draft, and I went through the physical, and they turned me down. My out from my troubles and difficulties, I thought that would be acceptable. I'll go into service, I'll come back a man, then I'll go back to school, everything will be fine like my friends. They never finished either, I found out. And so all of a sudden, they turned me down, and I was so disappointed that night, I went out and got drunk. And I know, had they taken me that night, I'd gone out and got drunk. If I hadn't taken the physical, I probably had gone out and got drunk. Now, I know that today. I didn't know that then. You see, what I'm talking is alcohol is having an effect on my life, and I'm not aware of it. And like a lot of people, sometimes things start to fall apart, and then all of a sudden you get a little sprint in there, you hit a little plateau, and you kind of make a little comeback. And I had a high school coach that saved me, and he got me back online and back in school, and I ended up getting married in my last year of school, and I finally finished. Took me 5 years, a little longer than most, but I finally finished. And then I had an occupation I always wanted to do. And so I went off in that occupation, and I changed jobs 5 times in the next 6 years. And I went from small to big to bigger, biggest, and I was back up in there, and in the middle 60s, I'm 24, 25 years old, and I can look back as a sober person, a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, using the evidence in our book, and look back and see I was a full-blown alcoholic at that time. Because when I take a drink, I couldn't guarantee my actions. When I take a drink, I'm out of control. And I had what I call close calls and near misses, and therefore I don't like to mess up in front of people. And if I woke up one morning and I wasn't sure how I got home last night, and I have to start to put the pieces together. Last night I remember up to a certain time, and then I would have to maybe interrogate my wife in the kitchen to see for additional information, like what time I got home. Somebody bring me home, and they can't know that you're doing that, okay? And I can't let her know that I don't know, and so you got to be savvy about this stuff, see. And I need to have that information because I'm going to go down to work, and maybe those are the guys I started out with last night, and they have a tendency when I mess up, they like to bring it to my attention. And, make fun of each other and stuff like that, locker room stuff. And I'd rather have you punch me than embarrass me. That would be where I come from. And I learned a long time ago, never talk to somebody who knows more about what you did last night than you do, especially if they have a uniform. And so I just instinctively found that out. And so I didn't bite into certain leads. And what I did is I started to isolate my drinking. So if I went out on a recruiting trip or a scouting trip or something like that, I don't know why tonight I was thinking about the time I was in San Francisco. And you have to tell me if this is alcoholic thinking or not. But I knew that if I left Chicago at 9 o'clock at night, I would get into San Francisco about the same time. Because of all the time changes. And if I went out on a Thursday night, I could have a Thursday night of partying. And I sold the boss on the idea that what I would do is I'd get there, and the next day I could go out and scout the opponent and get some extra information, and he let me do that. So I take off on a Thursday night, I get into San Francisco, I get my car, I check in the hotel, and I go party in San Francisco. And Friday morning I wake up, I was at the hotel, and I even had the car keys. But I don't have a clue where this rented car is. And so now I wake up, of course I'm hungover, and I start searching for that car, and I tried the parking lots. I tried, I was, at the end of my efforts, and I saw in the corner there's a tavern. I thought I better go get a drink and think about this. See, and the best story I can come up with is somebody stole my rental car. I never thought about being honest. Like I parked it, and I don't know. San Francisco is a strange town. I don't know where it is. I never thought of that. And so I'm walking to that tavern. They got little teeny streets in San Francisco. And down the street was a car, half on the sidewalk and half in the street. See? Diagonally parked. And that's my car. And I want to tell you, I want to straighten that car up. I was so relieved. I went up to the corner to get a drink. Now it's Friday, and I'm not losing that car twice. So I decided that Friday I would go park the car at a central place. Then I would go party so that Saturday morning I know where the car is. See? And that's exactly what I did. I parked it. I went out, to all hours of the morning doing the stuff I do, and somehow end up back at the hotel, whether I had ride or cab or something. And we woke up the next day, and I had the car keys, and I knew where that car was. Successful night of partying again. See? And there's a lot of people that don't go to that effort to plan stuff like that. See, and there are. These things were happening to me on a regular basis. I'm just not aware of it. See, I'm not aware of the hold that alcohol's got on me. But I know this: after 4 years, I needed to make a change. Now, I don't know what you do when you're getting in the hot water, when you feel like you're going to get found out, or it's really going to hit the fan, whatever the term is for that. Then I switched jobs. I had a guy offer me a job in Kent, Ohio. A little smaller place, but a bigger title and more responsibility. I went out there to be his right-hand man, and, within 2 months of having that job, I went out to a big convention in New York, and I just make a drunken fool out of myself at this convention. And I wake up that next day, and I'm just a mess, and I messed myself, the bed, the whole deal, and I'm in hot water again. And I know the boss is going to hear about it. And so we were driving back to Ohio the next day, and he said, I heard about last night. And again, I don't ask what you heard or who you heard from. See, the key word there is heard. He didn't see it. And so I said to him, I said, yeah, that was a bad one. But that won't happen again because I'm not drinking anymore. I don't know if I'm the only one in this room that ever made a pledge like that. But I want to tell you, I was sincere. And so my logic was this, that I was to ask other people not to drink. And I thought, well, if I don't drink, I'll set the example. And so therefore, I have no trouble about saying, Tom, don't drink, and Alan, don't drink, because I don't drink. And if you do and I catch you, I can take your scholarship. So it was a power move, but it made sense to me. And so for 3.5 years, I didn't drink. But after 3 years, I left the place. In 1970, we had shootings and killings and martial law and all that stuff, and I didn't have a drink. I had no program. Being alcoholic or alcoholism never entered my mind. I couldn't have spelled AA. I knew nothing about that. That was not a thought. And so I end up in Madison, Wisconsin, and I'm up there 6 months, and we're out at a local hot spot. I made a promise in Ohio. I didn't make any promises in Wisconsin. None of those people knew me. I went up as a non-drinker, and that's what they knew of me. And I'm always concerned about what I think you think about me. And so I've got that image. But one night out there at the Left Guard, we were having a little get-together, and one of the guys was up doing a little sweet talking and stuff, and he left a drink beside me in a very, very small container, very small glass. I have long forgot what it might have been. But with no program, with nothing in my life, me not being with the people I had promised, I'm already making errors of living sober. I don't have to be drunk to do that. And the next thing I know is I pick up his small glass and I take a sip. Understand the word. Very important here. I take a sip, I take a taste. And I'll tell you what happened to me. I became a living example of what Dr. Silkworth writes in the doctor's opinion. Of course, I don't know it then, but after I get sober and I get familiar with that writing, and Dr. Silkworth talks about a certain group of people, not all, when they take a drink, they get a phenomenon of craving. Hard to say it and can't spell it, but I know what it is. See? A phenomenon. And I got a craving, and after a sip, after a taste, I wanted more. I hadn't drank for over 3.5 years. Knew nothing about alcoholism or a program or any step, nothing. Larry's way of not drinking. And Larry took a sip, a taste. And I excuse myself that night, and I go next door to a liquor store, and I'm drunk before I get home at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And I was never in the next 3 years able to stop drinking again. And I just was reminded that, like the guy says, well, they happen in California, a little matchstick can set a whole state on fire, for heaven's sakes. A little matchstick can burn your house down. In alcoholism, a little taste, in my case, I don't know about your case, took me out. I'm thinking the old story about Muhammad Ali and Sonny Liston down there in Muhammad used to say, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. He hit that Liston so quick that I don't think they caught it on camera. He's down and out. I thought, that's what the hell alcohol did to me. I took a sip, bam, it took me out. I just didn't know it at the time. And I know about phenomenon of craving. I still have phenomenon of craving. I love telling my little Tootsie Roll story. See, I'm sober, and the lady across the hallway, I'm in her office with a little basket of Tootsie Roll, one-biters, maybe after Halloween like now. And she said, Larry, would you like a Tootsie Roll? And I take a couple and thank her. I go in my office. Now, I'm watching myself. And I unwrap one Tootsie Roll, and I unwrap a second Tootsie Roll, one on the left side, one on the right side, because you got to work Tootsie Rolls. You got that texture. You got that syrup. You got that chocolate. You got that chewy stuff. And my system is just roaring. The saliva's flowing, and my mind is saying, I wonder if she'll leave the office. Will she close the door? And she left the office, and I checked. I'm in her office. I got a handful of Tootsie Rolls. Because when you're stealing Tootsie Rolls, you don't have time to count. And I'm back in my office, and I'm unwrapping Tootsie Rolls, and I'm putting the paper in the waste paper bag. I got 5 or 6, and I'm working. And all of a sudden, my mind says, Joni's going to come back here. She'll walk in my office. She'll look in my waste paper basket. She'll know that I'm stealing her Tootsie Rolls. I thought, I better put something over the top of that thing. And I said, that's not good enough. I picked that basket up. I put it on the other side of me. If you're getting a look at my waste paper basket, you got to come through me. You understand that? That, to me, is a phenomenon of craving. You want to talk about peach pie, you want to talk about anything that goes in my mouth. When I was smoking, once I lit up, that's good for the whole day. Last thing at night, put the fire out. Now, not everybody's system, my wife's system isn't like that, but my system is like that. And I don't know it. I do it, but I'm not aware of it. And so those next 3 years, my drinking behavior, it got me fired, it got me arrested, it got me in the mental ward. I had double hit and runs. I had the wife finally said, enough. If you ever do it again and, you're out of here, that's after a series of ins and outs and all the stuff that happens. And I do it one time. I am so clever. Alcoholics are so clever. I didn't plan to have it work this way, but she was out sunning herself, and I thought, if she has a drink, she can't tell if I'm drinking. I'm not sure where I heard that, but it's not totally correct. Now, here's the thing. When you sneak drink at home, or if I sneak drink at your house, I got to get a lot, get it quick, and don't get caught. Those are the rules of sneak drinkers, sneak eaters, sneak smokers, sneakers. You know, that's just what it is. I don't think it's written down in a book anyplace, but that's just the way it is. And I kind of overdose. I must have got the non-watered down stuff, and I pass out on my family room couch. That's how clever I was after the last I promise never again. You know, and everybody's got a breaking point. That happened to be hers. She talked to that lawyer. Next thing I know, there's a deputy there with a letter that says I have to leave, and I don't respond well to that. It's my house, etc., etc. And he says, you will leave. And then they all left. And I had gone out in my car, and I'd picked up a shotgun after I watched a cowboy movie, and I'm going to sit at home protecting my homestead. I look back at that period of time. I don't hunt. I don't do nothing. This is not me, you understand? This is not how I react to stuff. But under the influence and where I was at, it seemed to me as I look back, the whole world is coming apart. The guys fire me by my profession. The wife wants to get rid of me from the family and the marriage. I got no income. I got no job. I'm mentally mixed up. I'm emotionally mixed up. My whole world's coming apart. They're doing a number on me. I don't know who the hell it is I got to defend against. So I sit there with my gun. And there was that ugly lamp over there. Boom! Well, I didn't hit it. Took me 2 times. Not a good shot. But there's holes in the ceiling, and and I make a mess out of everything, and I pass out, and the booze runs out. You understand? That's a key. No more booze when I come to, and I look at the mess, and I'm starting to come out of it, and then I panic, and I got to get out of there, and I'm on the run, and all that stuff, and I'm sorry about this. I don't really mean to be like that. And I gave the officers the gun, so that everybody seems to be nervous about that, until it was the day about my divorce, and I was going in to be divorced, first case of the day, and I thought, humorously, after I'd had a few drinks, that if I got that shotgun, and when I walk in that courtroom, I just put it on the back pew. Just for emphasis, that's all. And they wouldn't give it to me. And that made me upset. And so, I don't know, the case didn't go well. There were 5 deputies, and I had my arms behind something I said, I think, or something, or whatever. But that old judge, he hit that podium, he said, you're divorced. And that took another phase of my life out of there. See, I'm on a losing streak and don't understand it. My response to that is to drink more, not to drink less. When I have a hit and run, I don't stop drinking. I just have to be more careful about drinking. When I get to DUI, I don't stop drinking. I just got to be more careful about not getting caught. When things happen to me, booze becomes the answer. Booze is my solution. I ended up in an apartment building, unable to work. I would get up in the morning and I'd get my bottle and I would step over the barf buckets. You understand that? And I go into the bathroom to have my first drink because I'm going to be sick. My body is swollen up like some big Buddha. My skin is yellow. My gut's out here. My eyes are squinty. I sweat like a hog, and my nose is running. And I'm a mess. And I'm going to be sick. Now we're not talking about tossing cookies and throwing up. We're talking about, puking at the extreme degree, hands and knees on the floor, little green pieces, little red pieces, little yellow pieces. You're ripping yourself inside out, and then take another drink to make a stop, and then again, and then take another. And pretty soon, I have enough alcohol in me, I stop being sick, and you see there it worked. Alcohol was the solution to that illness, that sickness. And all of a sudden, I can start to shake, and the next thing, I can go into my little room, and I can sit in that chair because I got nothing going. I'm not going anyplace. I'm not doing nothing. There's nobody calling, nobody wanting to see me. My world got down to basically one person. And if my mind went into the future, I had none, so then I got suicidal thoughts. If my mind goes into the past, all I see is those people messing me over, then I get angry and hateful and homicidal, and I don't deal well with that kind of thinking, so I'm going to just take a few more drinks and level it off. Just kind of get the brain dull. I like to use the illustration of the auto. Put the key in ignition, start the motor, put it in park, motor's running, I'm not going anywhere. And I did that a day at a time for a period of time. I don't know exactly. That's a condition I got into. When we talked about going to any length to be sober, I went to any length to destroy my life. I gave alcohol and alcoholism the best I had. I gave it the wife, the family, the kids, the occupation, the career, the money, all that stuff. I gave it my mental, my emotional, my physical, and my soul to booze, and never identified booze as the problem. I identified her as a problem, him as a problem, them as a problem, God as a problem. I had a long list of people I could blame, and alcohol wouldn't be on it. And that's the condition I was in when all of a sudden, that's what it used to be like in a general way. All of a sudden, and what happened to change that was one of these. Uninvited guests. Remember how that used to scare you? Huh? Didn't hear them coming. Knock on it. Sweat. It was the one person still in my life stopped by, and she said to me, to check on you. Not to visit, to check on you. And she brought a newspaper that day. Almost never comes by. Couldn't remember the last time a paper came with her. She leaves the paper. I'm sitting in my chair. I've gotten through my sickness, my illness, and all that stuff. I looked at the sports section. I do that first. I did that this morning. I did that then. And on the inside of that paper was a picture that drew my attention. Remember, a picture, not a headline. And I recognized that picture. The first black picture for the Brooklyn Dodgers back in the 50s. After Campanella and after Robinson. And he was great, an all-star and World Series and terrific. And the story was about him, and I glanced. The first part of that story talked about his alcoholism. How he had lost family, rings, money, fortune, all that stuff, career. And it got better over here, and someplace in there was a number to call if you think you got a problem. I'd like to have you think about the odds on that. A person comes by uninvited, brings a paper that almost never happens, on the sports section, not the front page, not the Metro, the sports section, under a picture with a phone call for somebody with a problem to make a phone call to. I don't know the mathematical odds on that. I really don't think it's a mathematical question. It seemed like something greater than myself was looking out for me. And I was at that bottom. I didn't know what the problem was. I had no answer. I was done. And it was delivered to me in the section that I would find. The next thing I know, I'm dialing a number. It's in the Bronx, New York. I'm in Madison, Wisconsin. And I don't know the person on the other end of the phone, but basically they said, now listen to the wisdom of this. It says, sounds like you got a problem. You should call somebody local. What I had said, what it came out of it, I have no idea. But somebody experienced enough, that was the answer. Call somebody local. Well, who am I going to call? I don't know anybody. I've had a lot of people talk to me about my drinking and my behavior and this, that, and the other, but, I never met anybody from AA. Nobody ever talked to me about recovery, treatment. That just wasn't part of my thought. But I had a flashback. 3 years prior, I'd been at a golf outing when I was still working and had my props. And I come off that 18th hole into that clubhouse to get another drink, and my friend says, Larry, come here. I want you to meet somebody. And as soon as he said, this is Ryan, I knew that Ryan had played with the Yankees. He'd been a great relief pitcher in his day. He used to have a scenario body. He'd come out there with his Coke bottle, thick glasses, and he would squint and throw pitches wildly in the warm-up, and as he faking it, all this stuff. And I was meeting a celebrity. And we talked about 5 minutes because they were not drinking. When somebody in the Bronx, New York says, call somebody local, I remember Ryan's name because the introduction wasn't about the Yankees. My friend said, Larry, I want you to meet Ryan. He's the director of an alcohol rehabilitation center in Stoughton, Wisconsin, half hour south of Madison. That was the introduction, the one that I didn't hear, the one that I didn't pay attention to, the one that I never thought about again because I never ran into him again. That seed had been planted up there. That chance meeting. Again, the odds on that. And all of a sudden, when somebody in New York gives me that thought, it blossomed. I think maybe it was planted by the great gardener. And it just kind of came out when it was supposed to come out. And I looked in the yellow pages, and I found Stoughton Hospital, and I made that phone call. And Ryan wasn't there that day, but the lady said, would you talk to somebody else? And I said, sure. And you know what? A guy by the name of Bill W., World War II fighter pilot, kind of like the Bill W. in Akron making a call. And he wanted to go see somebody, and this Bill W. called me. He took that 12-step call, and he invited himself over, and he came by, and he shared with me his story. He was a World War II fighter pilot and was drinking and all that stuff, and his life got bad, and he was sober 3 years. I never talked to anybody that was a recovering person. I have never met anybody in AA that I know of. And he came to my place, and I didn't drink much while he was there. Because I asked him if it was okay. He said, don't drink much. I didn't. I just had one glass. And kind of nursed it through because I didn't want to be sick, and I don't want to have the shakes when I have company. And so Billy says, I'll get back to you. Ryan calls in between. And on November 11th, a Tuesday of that year, 1975, Billy Walsh comes over to my place, picks me up about 10 o'clock in the morning. He takes me down to Stoughton, Wisconsin, introduces me to Ryan in that section in there, the alcohol treatment section. And they interviewed me, talked with me, put me in a bed, and I haven't had a drink since. I think about Billy. Somebody brought it to my attention. November 11th is Veterans Day. He's a World War II fighter pilot veteran. On that Tuesday in 75, he might have had something else to do. Maybe a parade to go to or some other vets to be with. And instead of that, he came over and stopped at my place and picked me up. And my life's been different ever since. He didn't even know me. Met me once. And so I go down there to Stoughton, and there, I'll tell you, they checked me in there, and they got these little meetings and stuff like that, and they're talking about alcohol and alcoholism, and they're talking about that liquid drug alcohol. When you put it in your system, it's going to control you. You're not going to control it. You're no different than a junkie on the street. You're shooting up, and when you put booze in you, it controls you. Look at your behavior, blah, blah, blah. And they shared with me their behavior because most of them are recovering alcoholics. I had never heard people talk about that. I never heard people tell those secrets out there right in public in front of you about some of the dastardly things that they did. And all of a sudden, I seemed to match up with what they were talking about. And they said, you got to get honest with yourself. You got to take the responsibilities for your actions, drunk and sober. You let everybody else off the hook. Quit blaming people. And that's what I had to do. And I, because of what they shared, I was able to sit there and do my inventory one night about 3 o'clock in the morning. You know that first inventory where you're just early sober and the booze is down below your head and your ears and your heart, and it just starts to come just, unedited, just rushing through. And all of a sudden you realize the drink and the trouble and the trouble and the drink and all that stuff, and they put it in terms that I could understand. And the next thing I know, I put these things together, and I saw the role alcohol was playing, and I was the guy that picked up the drink. And I looked at that alcohol as my opponent. That's what I looked at. I looked at alcohol as my opponent, and I looked in there and I saw this liquid. I said, there's no brain, no heart, no feelings in there. And when I drink it, I become like that. I'm brainless. I do dumb stuff. I'm heartless because I'll hurt you. If you care about me, I'll hurt you again. I don't have any feelings until you leave. And I should be able to whip anything that small in my business. Yet I had a long losing streak with booze. And Ryan's put it in terms I could understand. He said to me one time, he said, Larry, He said, if you've got an opponent that beats you all the time, you know what to do about that? And I said, no, Ryan, what do you do? Looking for some real strategy. He says, get them off the schedule. You don't play them, they don't beat you. I figured out that meant don't drink. It took me a day or so, but that's... Yeah. And he said, you know, in my business, if you lose as much as you have, Larry, they fire the manager. Go ask Joe Torre about stuff like that, say. And I understood that terminology. I had to fire me. He says, get out of the driver's seat, get on the passenger side, and let something else run your life. Be it the program, the God, the sponsor. We got a whole lot of ways of doing it. And all of a sudden, I got excited about what they were talking about. They offered me the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was powerless over. My life was unmanageable. By my standards, I look at the stuff that happened. I said yes to both of that. And then I had that first introduction to the spiritual side. It never was that I didn't believe in God. I just didn't believe I was worthy. I was the one going to hell and burn forever. I deserved that. And they talked about a loving, caring, and a forgiving God. And so I like the one they talked about. They gave it to me, and that's the one I still have to this day. And so he and I have met many, many times and conversed many, many times, and thought and prayer and actions and stuff like that, the opportunities that he gives us. The next thing I know, it's time to leave there, and it's 30 days, and they said, write down 5 things you're going to do every day, Larry. Write them down so you don't forget them. And I've been doing that. I did that this morning. We were up in Williamsburg, and I've been trying to do that every morning since. I missed a few, but not many. And the next thing is they gave me a meeting guide that said if you're going to continue what you got started, you need to get out to the meetings, wherever you are. And so I started that. And I went back into Madison. There was nothing changed in Madison. The only thing that changed is I wasn't drinking. And I was introduced to this new program, and I got to meetings, and I started to meet people. I started to do steps. I started to make amends. I started to write things, visit things, do what it talks about. And the next thing I know, a friend of mine who I talked with, he went to Berea, Ohio, and saw a former boss of mine. He had a job opening. I was looking for a job in Vandalia State Prison in Southern Illinois. I was going to be the athletic director of a prison athletic program. Guy says, good job. He says, one thing, you know where the guys are every night. And you know how long they'll be there. So I thought that was my new field, and it didn't turn out that way. Again, something else was working for me. And I got an invite back to Berea, Ohio at the school I started at. I was back at the beginning, and they hired me. And knowing I was in recovery, they took a chance on me at 6 months sober. And 27 years later, I retired from there, and it's been 5 years out. And so I'm back in Cleveland, Ohio, and I got into an area that's heartland of AA, like most of our areas are heartlands of AA. It pumps strong and it pumps regular. And I got that meeting guide, and I got out there with our meetings, and that's where I heard about sponsorship, having a sponsor, have a mentor, have somebody smarter than you that knows what's going on, and attach yourself to that person. And I've done that ever since. They talked about having that home group and making a commitment to that home group and being part of that home group and helping with that home group. I got a kick out of Bob today. The longer you're in the program, some of the duties you get to do. And my home group, one of my duties at the end of the meeting, we happen to meet in a church that has a men and women's restroom. And my job at the end, before turning the lights on, I always check the women's restroom. Make sure they put the seat down, make sure everything's cleaned up and everything. I've been there the longest, and therefore that's one of my duties. See? And make sure sometimes I get to take the trash home and take the trash out. And it's interesting to me sometimes, I don't know if you ever notice how your meetings end, the ending to a meeting. And some of the meetings that I go to are strong fundamental groups, and after the meeting part, you know, they have the beginning part of the meeting, and then the meeting, and the meeting after the meeting, and it's often, if you get clusters here and clusters there and clusters over here, and the smokers outside, there's things happening. The room didn't just empty, the building didn't just empty, there are people there. Some have to go, obviously. But you look around and you see this talk, and close enough and sponsor stuff and things like that. In that meeting, maybe a half hour later, one of our rules is you never leave the parking lot. You never leave anybody in the parking lot. We always wait till the last car, lights come on, and they start up, and then we go. And that 8:30 meeting started probably about 7:30 people being there, and oftentimes I don't get home till 11:30. If we go out to ice cream, you know, that's important. Sometimes I don't get home to 12:30. And so that's just what I'm bred with. I have two groups on in the morning on Monday and Friday. My Friday group, I like to mention, is it's the only group I go to that on occasion you have to have seatbelts because it'll get volatile. And if you bring up a topic, it will be addressed. You have to understand it. See, not always to your liking, but it's an exciting and it's never the same. And so there's a spirit there. And so as I think about the things I've learned in the meeting as I close down here, our big book was given to us, and I hope we don't make the big book too complicated. If I just look at the titles, I like to make it real simple. It says in there, the doctor's opinion. There's a doctor that has an opinion. I'll read it, see what he has to say about alcohol and alcoholism. Then there's a Bill story. It's about a guy named Bill. He had a little trouble with his drinking. And then there's a chapter on there's a solution. It tells us what the solution is. And then the third chapter says more about alcoholism unless you haven't figured it out yet. Okay? And then finally the atheists and agnostics, we need to touch on that because the term God and higher power is going to be used. So we have an explanation. And finally we get to chapter 5 and it says how it works. How it. What's the it? We find out it's our program of 12 steps and the explanation of those. And then the next chapter says into action. That infers there must be something else to do. Okay? Into action. And so we go 5 through 11. And then that 7th chapter says working with others. Working, not playing, dating, romancing. Working with. Okay? And others has an S on it. And it means that there may be many people that we're supposed to interact with in whatever way we can. And I look at those steps. The first one told me who's wrong and what's wrong. Steps 2 and 3 gave me a new relationship with a higher power. Steps 4, 5, and 6, once I get right with Him, then I can get right with me. And then 8 and 9, I get right with other people. And that's a way of clearing away the wreckage of the past. Sometimes the wreckage of our past, once we get that cleared up, there's going to be some damaged goods there, like children and wives and friends and family that we're still going to interact with. And so step 10 gives us a regular daily inventory, keeping it current. And 11, of course, is a spiritual thing as a summary of the other. And then 12, what does it ask us to do? It says we have a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience, a personality change back in Appendix 2 that's sufficient for the recovery from alcoholism as a result of doing the steps. And then they try to carry the message. Try is an important word. Try to carry. It's like trying to carry the ball to the goal line. Try. That's all they ask us to do is try. And whenever and wherever the opportunity presents itself. And then practice the principles. What are the principles? I look at the principles, I say, back in our area they'll talk about some of the absolutes, see, and I look at our steps, I think it says, love God, love self, love others. I think that's what it says. I think I heard that as a kid. You know, I'm willing to practice that, and I have a better chance to live life in a positive, joyous way. And then I like to finish with Tom helping me here as we finish off. A fellow down in Florida, North Miami, did something for me that made a lot of sense that time. And he told me, he said, I want to talk to you after the meeting, kid. And he says, you know, if you afterwards, he said, if you put the 12 steps of this program in your life, you will not take a drink. He had 42 years. He was out of New York. He knew Bill Wilson and all those guys. And so he did something visually for me that I could understand. He put a cup down and said that this was alcohol, and he got right next to it. And he says, now, if you take 1 or 2 steps away, and he backed off a little bit, just a little, but he reaches his arm up, as if he's reaching for the drink. Go ahead, Tommy, reach your arm out there. He says, if something good or bad happens to you, with only 2 steps, chances are you're going to take a drink, because that's what you're used to doing. Even if you had 4 or 5 steps, a little bit further, but 4 or 5. He says, and all of a sudden something good or bad happens, and you reach out, and next thing you know, you're working back towards your drink. He says, but if you put the 12 steps of this program, go ahead and pace them off like an official. Yeah, back there, yeah. I know 12 steps is 2 more yards than a first down, see? So, that's good. Now he says, if you have something good or bad happen, if you got the 12 steps of the program in your life, when some of those things happen, you can't reach that drink. You got to take those steps out, and then you're working back. He says that then you're either working toward a drink or you're working away from a drink. And I'm someplace in the middle like I am here, and I can see that distance, And in my mind, that makes sense to me. The more I can get between me and a drink will help keep me sober. How about if I put the 12 traditions in? Another step back. How about if I put the 12 promises in? How about if I put those ABCs in? And I got that big book in 164 pages. How about if I get that sponsor in there? How about if I get that God in there? How about if I get that home group in there? How about that Mansfield prison? How about that Medina jail? How about Stella Maris? How about Founders Day? How about the International? How about the Pockets of Enthusiasm? How about? Somebody says to me, sometimes you hear somebody say, I'm bored in AA. How the hell can you be bored in AA? The reason you're bored is because you're boring. Being bored in AA is, to me, is selfishness. What you're saying is, it's up to me or us to entertain you so you're not bored. Well, you get off your doggone, and you get busy in here, and all of a sudden life has things it hands you. It has beautiful things and it has sad things. Now, I have been through deaths of moms and dads and loved ones and people. Just buried my former boss a week or so ago. Sad stuff. I've got a son in the program and a daughter still wandering. So it doesn't like it just goes away because I got sober. And so, and I've had beautiful things and meet and fall in love and have grandchildren and kids married and promotions and champions. All beautiful stuff. Like my old second sponsor used to say, a drink ain't going to make anything better. And it won't make any bad thing go away. So the whole idea is don't take a drink at a time, one day at a time. And time will pass. And if we put these things in our lives and we make a connection with the people and the program and a higher power, we'll have a life that's adventurous, exciting, and I want to be part of it. And don't want to miss any of it. So I'm one of those guys, when I'm on the road, I'm looking for you. I found a meeting in Williamsburg. I use a simple philosophy. If I came to your town drinking, I'd be drunk. If I come to your town sober, I'm looking for AA, the meetings, your clubhouse, wherever you are. If I'll give the same energy to recovery that I gave to drunkenness, am I willing to go the length? If I'm willing to do that, then we'll get the benefits from that. And I'm looking for that for the rest of the weekend here. Bob got us started off with a great start, and we're here tonight, and got class coming after this, and a full day tomorrow. If there isn't enough here for you, shame on you. Thank you.